Hi guys, this is Segef, Frontlinetactic. This is my 100th video, and I thought I'd do something special. I can't deny that most of my success on my channel has been from Kenshi and some notoriety from Project Zomboid, both of which are survival games. So I thought as part of my 1 year as a YouTuber and 100th video, I'd do a rant about survival games and break it down. So what classifies a game as a survival game? Many of us have played survival horror games such as Left 4 Dead and Resident Evil franchises. But what I want to do is identify what makes a survival game, which is a largely growing genre. Such games as Banished, as I'm playing in the background, How to Survive, Rust, Neo Scavenger, Kenshi, 7 Days to Die, DayZ, Planet Explorers, Starbound, Terraria, Minecraft, Starforge, Project Zomboid, and A State of Decay. Survival games are like ice cream, so many delicious flavors. Let's look at some of the differences and similarities that identify a game as a survival. First, let's look at the environment. Something familiar to kind of set our basis off, survival horror games generally are on a rail system. By a rail system, I mean they are funneled down a path of limited options, forcing a player to react versus act. Part of survival horror's charm of fear is you are not in control of your environment, while many survival games allow you for an open world / sandbox experience. This allows many players to feel a sense of freedom. I argue that this is just a power vacuum of danger. This freedom and open environment shifts the player to be part of the instruments of their own demise. This new stress of open location versus rails creates a sense of second guessing and doubt that is self-generated by the player. This freedom allows the player to be his own enemy. This result is present if openly designed as part of the game mechanics or not. Depending on the game, this is either a 2D or 3D environment that the player must worry about at all times. There are no zoning or instances that segregate the player from various dangers. The dangers are all around and active at all times. Many of times, actively moving and interacting with or without the player, making choices. This type of active environment allows the player more options than self-induced strain. Abundance of options can be just as detrimental as limited options. To the player, that is, as a mechanic. The concept of inaction versus action, coupled with resource scarcity, can cripple players. Intervene too soon, and put yourself in danger. React too slow, and you miss out on an opportunity needed to continue your existence. Often the environments are various resources scattered about in various ways. Be it food, medkits, all sorts of items, natural resources, renewable resources. And some of these items can be found laying around the world, or in specific areas, while others can be forged or farmed from NPCs or players. This is just another aspect of open possibilities that players must think about. Does the player fall back into the environment, stealthily foraging and collecting to avoid conflict? Or does the player go about loudly and boldly, taking that which he desires from NPCs and players alike for survival? And of course, all the shades of gray in between. The main focus of the survival environment is options, a truly double-edged blade. Expanding on that thought, let's talk about the different type of environments. Static generated versus random generated world. Static generated worlds will have the same map through each playthrough. This doesn't exactly limit options / replayability. Often in static generated worlds, the locations have random encounters in familiar places, allowing for the player to still feel a sense of mystery and familiarity. Random generated worlds have its own frustrations. Each time you generate a play, everything is shuffled, never allowing the player to fully have a familiar ground until after it's been explored firsthand. Some random generated worlds have static preset benchmark stages, predictable events that will happen once a player has reached certain presets in the environment / game progression, much like the goblin invasion in Terraria. Alright. Something that is also widely arguable as part of the environment is solo versus co-op versus PvP play. Some survival games are designed as solo play, increasing the player's feeling of loneliness or externally overwhelmed with no support. Solo play is often exaggerated by NPCs/dangers being numerous, hence my previous statement of feeling overwhelmed. But some games allow the solo players to team up with friendly NPCs to play at his own pace and speed, while games that allow aggression increase players' paranoia and mistrust. The friendly NPCs also bolster the player's need to seek out friendship, and it's an interesting way to see how some people play on how to phrase this in a certain level that shows social behavior versus antisocial behavior. Creating a very real life interactions. One does not have to look far for this behavior. Every year in some parts of the world, this is experienced during storm seasons, such as natural disasters, hurricanes, and the like. Games such as Rust and DayZ, players often spend copious amounts of thought and energy to avoid or gank each other. While many of these solo/PvP designed games allow for co-op play, giving players an edge versus the environment, as well as creating a greater impact in the environment. This greater impact may be increased use of various resources or survival, or the increased chance to be noticed by game dangers and or aggressive players. Co-op can be just as stressful of gameplay as the other polars. Having to worry about the other having to worry about a partner and a partner possibly holding a player back are both possible dangers and challenges. I believe co-op in gaming is often seen as a positive, seldom looked at the negative impacts. But then again, there are many positive aspects of having a partner, be it another player or NPC. Increased carrying capacity and security. Buddy system, safety in numbers. Now that we've discussed some of the various external stressors that a player must face in a survival game, let's look inward some. Stats. A player's stats and scores are very important. A mere health and stamina bar are common in many games, but in survival games it is often that the player has to worry about various other stats. In some games, the players must worry about managing their health, hunger, thirst, injuries that need first aid, resources, population, armor, resistance to elemental/external effects, and a slew of potential other primary and secondary stats. Games like Banish and Project Zomboid, managing your stats, the state of your stats, is a large part of the game. Emotional stats are just as important and transcend past the screen, increasing stress and frustration to the player. Emotional strain is often overlooked by most survival games, but there are a few that have this stat ingrained and impact the gameplay. And I feel that this makes it more realistic and thought-provoking by the designers, programmers, and publishers. Most survival games have a large crafting system implemented in. This gives a feel of working with your hands and living off the land. Items a player can make range from weapons, clothing, armor, cooking food, improving items and building/improving structures to live in. In many survival games, a home is a pinnacle part of the game, allowing the player to create a stable location. Allowing players a central location that they can search for food, resources, and store what they have found. A sense of home brings a calming and organized sensation to the players, as well as a focused goal in a game that can dwarf a player with options. But in games that allow for aggressive players, a home is often a place to set up or be ambushed. This will strike personal feelings within the players, increasing the paranoia and fear generated by the game's environment. By making a home, the player increases/decreases his own options of play and stress. Creating a corner of self in a world can go a long way. The crafting system makes everything personal. That if you're stolen from, you made that. You worked for that. It's not as simple as like, well, I can just go get another. So why do we like survival games? To feel like a badass, but challenging, answering some argument that we could do this if life ever came to it. But in truth, few people in society honestly know what it is like to survive in the wilderness, to be homeless, to actually go hungry, or to experience a life or death scenario. These games allow us a glimpse into these possibilities that our normally wouldn't ever experience, in a safe way to boot. I believe we seek these games out for a pure notion that most have not experienced the above mentioned. How easy are our lives? Most of us have access to info, the internet, at our fingertips with smartphones. We have delivery food systems on speed dial and 24-hour convenience stores less than 2 miles apart. On a certain level, these games humble us with what we have. Or I could be giving the psychological impact of gaming far too much credit than it deserved, and we may have just a huge nostalgic longing for Oregon Trail with better graphics. That is all I wanted to kind of rant about and break down. If you've enjoyed this rant and babble, or if you want to contest anything I've said, please leave a comment below. You can message me here or at one of the locations listed in the credits below. Remember, stay sharp, stay safe, and keep your head down. We're on the front line.